Welcome to Part 9 of the McIntosh MC2105 Restoration Series. In Parts 1 through 7, we electronically restored and fixed the amplifier, and in Part 8, we tested the amp's performance. If you missed those episodes, you may want to go back and check them out. In this episode, we're going to calibrate the front panel meters, install new lamps, a new glass panel, and Panlocs into a new wood cabinet. Along the way, I'll show you a trick to get more brightness from the meter illumination, a trick on how to deal with static affecting the meters, and the proper way to work with the delicate McIntosh glass panels without damaging them. Stay tuned to the end to see a demo of the amplifier playing through some vintage 60s speakers. I spent some time getting the recording just right using high-quality microphones, and I think you'll agree the results are impressive. Let's start by calibrating the meters. Okay, let's calibrate the meters now. When we begin, you'll hear me turn on the signal generator, and I've got the amplifier set for exactly 105 watts of output. To calibrate the meters, I'm going to adjust the potentiometers on the meter board so that the meters read exactly plus 3 decibels, both left and right, with the 105 watts of output. And I'm going to turn on the signal generator and take a look at the dials. You can't see me adjusting the potentiometers on the meter board. I'll do that off camera, but you'll see the results on the screen. And again, when we're at plus 3 decibels on both sides, we'll have our meters calibrated just right. Let's begin. Let's start with the left channel. Okay, almost there. A little bit touchy. Okay, right about there. Now let's do the right channel. Okay, perfect. So we have calibrated our meters. There are 8 lamps in the MC2105. There are 4 on top for the meters and 4 on the front for the front dial display. The 4 on top for the meters, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are 1888 bulbs, and those are rated for a half amp at 7 volts. The 4 on the front are actually a different type of bulb. Similar, but they're 1866s. Now these are rated for a quarter of an amp at 6.3 volts. I believe these are all the original lamps, and they're all really in good shape except for this one here, which we can clearly see is on its way out. Instead of just replacing this one though, I'm going to go ahead and replace all of the lamps just for reliability in the future. And we will be replacing these with incandescent lamps and not LEDs. Now, because we've removed the front glass, it's actually fairly easy to get to these bulbs. You just want to push them in and turn them counterclockwise and pull them out. But it is possible, even if you did not remove the front glass of this amplifier, by removing this top panel here, you have access to the 4 meter bulbs. And additionally, if you remove, you can't see it here, but right here is the meter PC board. If you were to remove that and hold it back, you actually can get in there, and there are clips that hold these lamps in place. And you could probably pull those out and replace the bulbs that way. And for these 2 in the bottom, you can do that from removing just the bottom panel. So just something convenient to know that if you do want to replace the lamps in your MC2105, you may not actually have to remove the front glass. Let me just remove one of the meter lamps here to show you how that works. See, we've got that. There's the old bulb. And now let me just remove one from the front panel to show you how that works. I just pushed in, turn counterclockwise, and there you go. There's our old bulb. Let me go ahead and replace all the bulbs now and show you what that looks like when I'm done. After installing the new lamps, I was doing some experimenting to see if I couldn't get the brightness of the meters a little bit brighter, and I have discovered something that I want to show you. What I'm going to do is, see this reflective piece of tape here? I'm actually going to slip this behind the lamps for both of the meters, and I'll show you what I'm actually doing in another shot. But right now, just look at the difference. First, I'm going to insert this reflective material behind the lamps for the right meter. And do you see that? Okay, do you see how the intensity of the brightness has increased? Now I'm going to continue to slide it over into the left meter. Okay, so now I have reflective material behind all 4 of the meter lamps. And it's not a huge difference, but it's enough to make those meters just a little bit easier to see in the dark. And with these, I think every little bit helps. So again, that's without. And that's with the reflective material. Hopefully you can see that in the camera as well. So I'm going to install this. Fortunately, this is reflective material is adhesive, and the transformers are there, the autoformers are there, so it's easy to attach this material to. Let me do that and show you what that looks like. These are the 4 lamps for the meters, and you can see the way this works is there's a plastic piece here and a plastic piece here, which catches the light and channels it down into the meters. And also there's this sort of aqua film that McIntosh uses to create that nice blue glow. And this is the area behind that I found benefited from having some reflective material. And when I was showing you, what I was basically doing was slipping in reflective material back there like that. And that was enough to redirect it back into this plastic piece here. So I think it's worth doing. This is the tape that I'm using here. It's called Shore Tape Hold Strong. And it's about 2 inches wide, and it's pretty reflective. I've cut an 8-inch piece here. This tape is very, very aggressive. So one thing that I am a little hesitant about is to put such an aggressive adhesive on these autoformers. But I do think it's worth it. So instead of peeling off this entire adhesive piece, I think what I'm going to do is just peel off enough here on one end and on the other to hold it in place here and on this other end. That way we'll only have a small amount of adhesive here and there, which shouldn't do too much damage if we were to elect to remove this. I'm going to do that now. I'm going to cut out the very ends. I'll cut out a piece and I'll show you what that looks like. So you can see I'm just going to cut off this piece of paper here. Be very careful. Again, this stuff is very aggressive. It already wants to stick to my scissors. Okay. Peel that. Okay, so we've got one exposed piece at that end. At the other end, I'm going to cut off a bit of the paper. There we go. So you can see just this part is exposed to the adhesive. Let me see if I can lay that in place. And go right to the end. And again, this is an 8-inch piece that I've cut, 8-inch long piece. And let's see if I can get that right about there. And line up the top. Okay. Not so great. Let's see. Can I get that a little bit better? It is difficult to do. Okay, let me see if I can secure that in with the chopstick. Okay. Now this end. Let me see if I can release that quickly. Pull this nice and tight. Right about there. And can I smooth that out with a chopstick? Yeah. Okay. Something like that. Let's smooth that out, make it look nice and neat. Okay, yeah, and so we've got a little bit of reflectivity on the back there just to give ourselves a little more light. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with that. I was just cleaning up these meters and getting them ready to put the blue piece of plastic over them. As I cleaned them with my cloth, I noticed that it created some static and it actually pulled both meters down. Not good, because these meters need to be zeroed out. And I should have mentioned that before when I was doing the calibration. Make sure that you use the screws here and here in the meters to zero them out before you do your calibration. I had already done that, but I neglected to show you. So if that happens and you create static here somehow, here's a good tip for you. These are just some anti-static cloths that are used for laundry to throw in the dryer. I just went upstairs and grabbed a couple, and I've laid them over there, and that should discharge the static. Let's take a look. There we go, much better. We can see that the meters are now back at the zero position, which is correct. By the way, these are the screws here and here. Very gently, before you do your calibration, use a screwdriver to turn these to get that needle just at the zero mark. Now, one thing about these cloths is I was trying to clean the plastic on these before I put the film over them. Unfortunately, the cloths left a little bit of dust as well, so let's see if we can gently clean this up now without creating a static issue. And you might even notice that as I do this, you see how just that little bit of static is moving that needle. That's how delicate these are. So let's see. Just wiping them cleanly. You see that one moved quite a bit. Let's see, are we back at 0? Now, this one moved a little bit, and instead of laying it right on top, I'm just going to see if I can lay it nearby, just so I don't get any of that residue on there. Okay, yeah, it took a little bit of work, but you can see I got the dial back to 0 on the right one. I'll keep an eye on that. If I need to, I can always reset the 0 point on these and then recalibrate using the process I showed earlier. Now, if you recall, when we replaced the lamps for these meters, there was a piece of blue film back there to help create the blue glow. In addition, McIntosh has this blue lens which goes over like that, and that needs to be screwed in place at this point. One more thing though before we do that, we need to put these shields in place. Okay. Yeah, it just slides in like that. And now the other. Okay, and now we can put the blue lens in place. Note that the holes for the lens are beveled, so make sure you get the orientation correct. There is a front and a back on these. Let me hold that there. Insert our first screw. There we go. Looks great. I've temporarily installed the original glass dial, and as you can see, it's actually in pretty good shape. There are a couple of areas here where you can see that the paint has either completely been removed here and here, for example, and areas where it is sort of lifting and separating, kind of a bubble behind the glass, and it creates these kind of dull looking areas like that here under the headphone jack. A little bit over here, if you can see that on the Panlock, and over here by this other Panlock button. I do have another dial, a reproduction that I purchased. This panel has greenish blue filters on it, and they've all faded, so these areas here are supposed to glow that bluish green, and they're actually pure white. Let me turn the amp on, and let me turn the lights off, and maybe you can see that. Let me turn the other lamp off too. I've adjusted the camera for low light. You can see the dial looks good, but again, these areas are supposed to be that bluish green, and we're getting pure white, and I believe that's because the filters in back have faded over time. Let's take everything apart, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here's the back of the original glass dial, and you can see there's a lot going on here. There's a piece of clear plastic, which serves as a light channel, captures the light from the bulbs here and here, and here and here, and spreads it evenly throughout the back of the glass. Under the channel, you can see they've inserted these pieces of film to give the text in the dial a blue-green hue, and this is what I believe has faded. I'm not sure why. It seems as though they would, create some color, but yeah, I'm just getting clear white. Let's take this apart and see what's going on. Okay, yeah, we can see there's the sort of a, I'm not sure if this was originally aqua blue as well, and it's just faded to green. But you can see this layer is green, and the layer underneath is this nice blue. And I am very surprised that this was not enough to create the tone that we need. This is what's happening, I guess, is where the actual text is, it has faded. So that's probably from UV light coming from the outside of the amplifier and bleaching this out. So yeah, that's why we're not getting that nice color. What we're really after at this point is, as I said, this plastic light channel. Let's see if we can't deconstruct this. Yeah, I had a little bit of foam here. You can see what happens to foam after 50 years. Look at that. Quite the mess. Okay, well, this will need to be cleaned up a little bit more, obviously, but let me go get the new reproduction glass to show you how this is going to work with it. Be right back. Okay, here's our reproduction glass, and looking at the back panel, this glass already has a blue tint to it, so it doesn't need these filters. We will need to use the light channel as I showed you, but first let me show you that bluish tint that's built in. Let me get a light here. You can see that the text already has a blue hue to it, so that's a nice feature. We don't have to add the additional filters. So the light channel will affix to our new glass style like this, And you can see again there's a lamp here, a lamp here, and a lamp here. Now it looks like they've added a little bit of reflective aluminum tape here, but didn't quite align it where we need it to be. So if we are going to use that tape, I'll have to lift that up a little bit and just recenter it. And again, what that does is it spreads the light evenly throughout to light up the back of all the text. Let me clean up the light channel and affix it to the new glass dial, and let's try it out and see how it looks. I had planned to affix this plastic light channel to the back of the dial glass the way it was originally installed, but then I noticed there was a hole here and a hole here in the plastic, and in the chassis, sure enough, there was a corresponding thread here and here at the same locations. So I just got some number 6 screws and affixed it directly to the chassis instead. I'm not sure why McIntosh elected to Scotch tape this to the back of the dial when seemingly there's a better mounting option available here using the screws. I'm going to temporarily now install the new glass dial in place so we can see what it looks like. Okay, there we go, looking good. One thing I noticed about the new dial glass is that they didn't provide a grommet here for the headphone jack. You can see there's a metal grommet for this Panlock push button and for this one as well. The original glass had a similar metal grommet here for the headphone jack, but this one doesn't have one. I'm not sure. I think it looks pretty good without it, but it might look better if I could find something to just finish that off a bit. Let me do a little digging around and see if I can find something. Okay, I told you I would look for something to finish off this hole for the headphone jack, and look what I found. Turns out they did include a finishing grommet to fit in that hole with this glass reproduction dial. For some reason though, they didn't attach it permanently and just included it separately loosely in another package, but that will go in basically like that, so we just need to glue it in place. And to do that, I'm going to use my trusty Gorilla super glue gel and give it a shake. Insert our grommet in place. Looks good. Okay, we've got the grommet installed for the headphone jack. Now let's put this glass dial assembly together. If you've never done this before, I strongly suggest you follow my instructions exactly. Otherwise, there is a very high likelihood of breaking this glass. Note that they've installed some foam here and here on the sides, but we really do need to have some foam on the top and the bottom as well. Originally, the top and bottom brackets actually had foam installed here and in here in the track, but as you can see, all that foam has disintegrated and all that was left was this tape. So I've cleaned all that up, and instead of installing new foam on the track, I'm going to actually affix it directly to the glass plate on the back. I'm going to use some of these soft touch gripper bars. These are readily available at Lowe's and other retailers, and I find it's just the right thickness for using on these glass dials. And I've cut a bunch into these 1/4 inch wide strips. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put one on the top and the bottom and the middle like that, and then space them out. There, 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 and there. Now these strips have adhesive backing, so we just need to peel the back off and attach them directly to the glass dial. Now, if you're ever confused about how to remove or to install or to work with these McIntosh glass dials with this amp, it's important to understand that this assembly needs to be completely assembled before installing or removing this from the amplifier. In other words, all 4 of these brackets need to be connected with the glass dial in place. Attempts to leave this portion in place and try to remove this bracket, or try to remove this bracket when these are in place, for example, could very well lead to disaster. So again, please follow my instructions very carefully. First thing you want to do is install this bottom bracket into place. Very carefully. Try to get that into place. It's a little tight with the foam installed. And just sort of center it with your eye. Okay, good. Now let's do the same for the top. It helps to sort of just start at one end and work your way down, gently squeezing and compressing that foam. And again, center with your eye. Okay, that seems good. Now we're going to attach the side brackets. And these will flip over and slide in like that. And the other, like that. Okay. Okay. And the screws that we're using are the ones that look like this. Keep it somewhat loose for now. Okay, now we can tighten up. All right, there we go, looking good. Okay, now the top grill slides in place like this, and then we can bolt it in from the other side. But I want to show you something. You can see how nicely that slips in place. Notice that on this side of the screen, there's this nice protective piece of plastic, and I've actually removed it on this side, so this is a bit rough. Ideally, that plastic should be installed back on there, but what I find what happens is that you see the space between this electrolytic and the autoformer and the power transformer is very, very tight. With this piece of plastic guard installed on this side, it gets very, very hard to push this down. Let me just show you. Let me reinstall it temporarily. Okay, so I'm just finishing snapping that into place. Okay. Now, let me show you. I'm going to try dropping this down now. And yeah, I don't know. It might be fine, but let's see. I got to do something about this. I don't like that. I think I'm going to cut this in two. Yeah, you can see here the rub marks, how much it's actually rubbing. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, it's not good. All right, I'm going to use these cutters. I think if I cut it right down the middle, we can actually spread the two pieces apart. There's enough room on here that we don't have to actually cut a piece out. Enough room, we can slide one piece this way and the other piece that way. Yeah, that should do the trick. I'm just going to go clean these ends off a little bit with the file. Be right back. Okay, I've got two clean pieces now. Let me put those into place and see if this doesn't work better. Okay, now I have a gap in the middle. Let's slide that in and see if that doesn't fit a little bit better. Perfect, much better. I'm glad I did that. Okay, let me secure this in place. I'm going to do that by holding this down and flipping it over. When installing the glass for this MC2105, I recommend doing it with the bottom side of the amplifier facing upwards. Also, place the amp so that the front sticks out a couple of inches past the edge of your desktop. Note that the bottom panel is not attached, this top panel is not attached, but the top grill is attached. Now you want to make sure you do this because once you put the bottom panel on, you won't have access to the screws to do that. However, it is important to have the bottom panel not installed when installing this front glass. Okay, I'm going to slide the glass assembly into position now. Note your Panlock push buttons. Those are the first two things you want to align on your glass dial. Okay, so align this right one on the left. Now also be very mindful that the potentiometers line up correctly, and also this headphone jack. If the headphone jack isn't centered directly within this grommet, remove this and then reorient the jack. It needs to be right in the center. Okay, and if everything looks good, you can slowly proceed to pressing it all the way in position. That looks good. Make sure that there's no dust or anything behind your meter glass. Okay, now we can put the bottom panel into place. Note that on this side of the panel, there is a semicircular cutout here, and that side will face forward. Once the bottom panel is in position, you want to install the screw that goes here and the other that goes here. This will keep the front dial assembly in place. Okay, now we can install the remaining 6 screws on the bottom. Okay, now let's flip the amplifier over. Now let's install the top panel. That's going to slide down like this. Okay, now we can install the 6 screws on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the other 6 on the other. Let's begin. Okay, and finally, let's install the 2 decorative end pieces. Okay, there we go. Looks great. Okay, I just took the knobs out of the ultrasonic cleaner, and as you can see, they're looking nice and shiny. The ultrasonic cleaner, along with the good scrubbing with a toothbrush, does a real nice job cleaning out these grooves. Before we install the knobs, let's slip on these protective felt washers. If your amp didn't come with the felt washers or yours are in poor condition, these are available online. And they're a good idea as they protect the glass from when the knob turns. Okay, let's install the power switch knob. Now our speaker switch knob. This is going to be our right gain knob. Turn that down. And I can adjust these later, but we'll start this off right about there. Put that into the middle position. This is our meter selector switch. And finally, the left gain. And again, I'll turn that down and align it approximately there. Okay, let's turn it on, see how it looks. Looks good. Let's turn off the lights now and see how it looks in the dark. Looks beautiful. I think we did a nice job. Here's our beautiful new cabinet, and we're going to install the Panlocs now. Now the cabinet's going to be very well ventilated. You can see here in the middle there's a large cutout, and there's no screen here. On top there's also a large cutout with a nice grill screen. This is the left Panloc. It'll install like this. So we just need to add a screw here and here. And here's the right. And that'll go like that. And again, just need to add a screw here and here. This is the track that the amplifier rides along as it slides into the cabinet. And this is the locking mechanism. When you press down on the front Panloc buttons, it engages and disengages this latch. I'm going to use a 16th inch drill bit. Let's begin. Now, instead of marking these holes with a pencil, I think I'm just going to leave the Panloc in place and use that as a template. And let's drill right in the center of these holes. Let's start here on the top. Okay, looks good. I tried sliding the amplifier into the Panlocs and it wasn't quite the right fit. The distance between the lip of the right track and the left track needs to be about 13 inches and we're just a little bit beyond that. Not a problem though, we just need to make a few adjustments. I've made the adjustment to the left Panloc. Let me show you what I've done. I removed this block from the cabinet and installed a set of 2 washers here, here, and here. And those act as shims just to bring this block a little bit further this way. Now let's do the same for the right Panloc. This right block is held in place by these 3 screws, and you can see I've already unscrewed them and removed the block from the cabinet. Now I'm going to reinstall the block with 2 washers here, 2 washers here, and 2 washers here to act as shims. 2 washers there, 2 washers there, and 2 washers there. Let's screw the block back into position. Okay, now all I have to do is reinstall the Panlocs as I showed you before. I think that should do the trick. I measured it out and I think 2 washes is just about right. If not, I'll just add more washes until we get the adjustment just right. Okay, we're ready now to install the amplifier into the cabinet. Note that on the Panlocs, I ended up going with 3 washes for spacers here and 3 washes here, just to bring it in a little bit closer, and I think that's going to work out just right. Now, before you attempt to slide in the amplifier into the cabinet, make sure that you've wound up the power cord very close and tight to the chassis. If you try to install this with a long power cord dangling, it's likely to get jammed in here. Also be careful to not put too much pressure on this glass faceplate. Okay, let's begin. Slide that in along the track. Okay, now when you get to about this point, these side clips are going to lock in, preventing you from going any further. What you need to do is press in the clip. Here's the left one here, and I'll press it on the right one, just with your fingers, like that, and then just give a little push. Okay, now we're past that point, and we can proceed to insert the amplifier all the way into the cabinet. Great. Now, to lock the Panlocs in place, we depress once. You can see how it's now in the more depressed position. That indicates that it has locked in. Let me do the same on the right. There we go. That wraps up the restoration of our MC2105. I hope you enjoyed watching this series as much as I did making it. As promised, let's end with a demo of the amplifier playing into a pair of KLH Model 6 speakers from the late 60s. The song is Pedal to the Metal by Chris Haugen and comes to us from the YouTube audio library. The music is streamed from an Apple Airport connected directly to the amplifier. No preamp is used. Enjoy.